Welcome. How's everybody doing? Are you enjoying Gen Con? Woohoo! Well, we're having a great show, and thank you so much for coming. Thank you for coming to this event to hear about Dungeons and Dragons in the future. In case you're wondering, why'd they bring that guy back? Well, it's my privilege. I get to introduce tonight Greg Leeds, who's the CEO of Wizards of the Coast, and he's a great guy. And I think he might be talking a little bit about D&D next. Woo! Come on, I'm excited. This is going to be awesome. I'm really invested in D&D next. I've been playing. In fact, yesterday I launched a website. Here's my little opportunity for a shameless promotional plug. I launched a web series called The First Paladin. We've been filming our D&D game, and we're playing D&D next. So check out that website, thefirstpaladin.com. And Saturday night at 7 o'clock, I'm presenting about it in the Wizards of the Coast rooms over by the exhibit hall 139. So come see me. So about 6 months ago, I went down to Wizards and I went to Greg Leeds and I said, hey, I've always wanted to have a keynote address at Gen Con. You know, first of all, I got Adrian's permission, of course. And then, and we would love to see, especially because you're working on a new edition of Dungeons & Dragons, we would love to see you present the first keynote, the inaugural keynote for Gen Con. And so that led to this evening. And Greg said, oh, that's great. We've got a lot of great star game designers. I'll get, no, Greg, yes, bring them on, but I want to see you get up on stage. I mean, you are the caretaker for the two, let's face it, the two best games invented in the history of mankind, right, are under your care and loving feeding. So, and it's like, if this was Starfleet, Wizards of the Coast would be the Enterprise, and you would be Captain Kirk, and we need to hear that view from the bridge, and so Greg said, okay, I'll come do it. And besides, guys, I want you to meet Greg Leeds, the CEO who's been here for several years at Wizards of the Coast. I think he has done an absolute fabulous job, really sincerely. So please join me in giving an awesome welcome to Mr. Greg Leeds, CEO of Wizards of the Coast.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, of course.
Very, very kind.
No worries.
Well, Peter, for those of you who don't know, I think most people know Peter founded Wizards, and all of us at Wizards of the Coast are grateful for the legacy that you created and left with us. It's a delight. Built to last, absolutely. I can also say we're very proud to be part of this inaugural keynote presentation, and we're really very excited to be able to talk to you about Dungeons and Dragons, and specifically the future of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, as all of you know, D&D has a long and vibrant history. It's kind of an enviable past that's unparalleled by any other game. When Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson first brought the world, when they first brought the idea to the world that would eventually become Dungeons and Dragons, it was just the beginning of something that no one really could have anticipated. D&D has lived on to delight millions of people around the world, and frankly, it's changed the landscape of gaming forever. And so now it's our responsibility to be the caretakers of D&D and make sure the future is bright. And I can tell you from my side, I've been thinking about my responsibilities, and I actually asked some people for their perceptions of my responsibilities. Yeah. Well, some of those perceptions are other people's. My true role is actually to ensure that we have the most talented and creative people to ensure that Dungeons & Dragons continues to be the greatest game of all time and make sure that it continues to provide the greatest possible entertainment for our fans. And I believe we have that team in place. In fact, in the next hour or so, we're going to bring up some of those individuals who are going to talk to you about their passion for really great gameplay based on wonderful storytelling. Now, we also know that the very nature of D&D, we don't really control the brand. Our fans control the brand. And thus, the process to create the future of D&D includes everyone in this room, everyone watching online. In fact, it includes everyone who cares about role-playing games in general. And it includes the people who are playing in the D&D Next playtest and people who will be participating in the D&D Next playtest. So this process, or journey rather, I guess I should say, is one that we're taking together. I'm going to tell you it's going to take some time, but I also guarantee you it's going to be a lot of fun. And that's what we're really here to talk about today, to tell you, to show you how we're going to take that journey together and make Dungeons & Dragons the game you want and make it the greatest game of all time. So for everyone here in the audience, everyone watching online, for our Wizards colleagues back in Renton watching, I want to thank you for helping create the future of Dungeons & Dragons. All right, and to kick this show off, we're really lucky to have a great master of ceremonies, Mr. Kevin Culp.
Thank you, Greg. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Kevin Culp. By trade, I'm a video game designer out in Boston, but for the last 12 years or so, I've been one of the administrators, one of the people who helped run Russell Morrissey's D&D website, ianworld.org, originally founded by Eric Noah back in 1999 at the beginning of 3rd edition. I post there as Pirate Cat, and that is the community, it's the internet's largest independent site for D&D news and the largest independent message board. My group started as playtesters back in '99 for 3rd edition, and we're D&D Next playtesters now. And I've got to say, it's been an absolute joy to watch the fan community grow and change throughout that decade. I'm also involved with the Ennies, the Gen Con EN World RPG Awards being held tomorrow night that celebrate excellence in tabletop role-playing. And that puts me in kind of the fun position where I'm sort of a professional fan. I'm a neutral third party and a die-hard D&D gamer who gets to talk publicly about the things he loves most about gaming. So if you've ever read EN World's message boards, you know that just like everybody else, albeit maybe with more polite grammar and fewer swears, I've got opinions about D&D and about WotC is and has been doing with what I kind of consider my game. And of course, it's also all of your games. Some things I loved, some things I haven't. But just like everybody in this room and everybody watching online, we want Dungeons & Dragons to be the best game it can possibly be. Exactly. And you know, talking with the people that you're going to see here tonight and seeing what they have to show us, I've got a really good feeling about where this is going. I started off the D&D Next playtest with the Friends and Family program, and we've been continuing with it, and we're having a stupid amount of fun. I'll be functioning a little bit like a dungeon master up here, guiding the discussion and making sure everybody contributes. I probably won't be making people roll initiative, maybe. And to be fair, right, we have a series of topics that we need to make sure we cover. And we're going to try to avoid reading this like box text. For anyone who's suffered through that, you should know a good DM knows how to improvise. So this is the part where my 14-year-old self, sitting around my friend Ken's table in southern Connecticut, wonders kind of how I ended up here on stage with the people who created Dungeons & Dragons. So it's my honor to introduce them. First off, we have Mike Merles, ENnie and Origins award-winning game designer and senior manager for the Dungeons & Dragons R&D team. You'll be pleased to note that Mike has a gender. I first met Mike back in the year 2000 at Night Games, a small convention in Brooklyn, New York, where out of nowhere he stepped in to help me run a Call of Cthulhu game. And we finished that game, which was spectacular. I said, I think that guy's going somewhere in role-playing. So next up, I'd like to introduce John Schindehede. He's the Chesley and Alexicon Best Art Director Award winner and the Senior Creative Director for Dungeons & Dragons. Someone brilliant told John to break a leg before the performance.
I always follow direction.
And finally, beloved author and creator of The Forgotten Realms, the guy whose Waterdeep box set actually taught me how to run city-based D&D games, Ed Greenwood. Okay, we've got all sorts of things to talk about, but John, thank you for the sketches and the character sheets, but I think you forgot somebody.
No, I would never forget anybody. Greg, we got one just up here for you too, and I hope you enjoy it.
That's some size category. So, I would like to start by making sure that everybody's on the same page, because a lot of people who may be in this audience or who are listening haven't played the D&D Next playtest. So why don't we start with Mike? Why don't you tell everybody what D&D Next actually is?
Well, first, Kevin, thanks for being here, serving as our kind of DM. So really glad to have you here to kind of conduct things. So to start with, kind of who here has taken part in the playtest? Just go ahead and okay, so a lot of people. So, but I know not everyone. So really to start with, before we can really talk about what D&D Next is, we have to talk about what D&D is. Because D&D Next, at the end of the day, it is D&D. And really, D&D, while it's called a role-playing game, it's much more than a game. D&D, it's a shared experience. It's creativity. It's whether you're building a world as a DM or creating a character as a player. It's about that creative spark that we all have. It's about drama at the table. It's like that moment where you're playing a cleric, you're down to one final hit point, you're fighting some giant clockwork dragon that your DM has cobbled together, either just, kit bashing something, just reskinning some monster, or throwing 5 templates on something, and you've got 1 hit point, and you have Sanctuary, and that's what you cast, hoping for the best, and the DM save comes up a 1, and you escape to fight again. It's that moment where maybe the first time you're playing Tomb of Horrors and you come across this mysterious black hole in the wall, and I'm sorry, and you don't lose your hand, you find all the candy on the other side of that sphere of annihilation. So, it's maybe the first time when you played Forge of Fury and you ran into a roper and you learned the hard way that not every monster you fight is CR appropriate for your level. It's maybe when you fought Iron Tooth and learned the hard way that maybe the designers didn't quite understand how powerful elites could be and maybe had a TPK unwittingly. Or maybe you landed a crit on that daily power and took him down. And this is kind of actually a personal story that happened to me. It's, when the players just decide randomly to go into a tavern and start hassling the barkeep, they really want to know his name, and you've been reading a lot of Michael Moorcock's. The first name you blurt out is Elric, and you're kind of wondering for a second, why is everyone laughing at you? And
if it makes you feel any better, Mike, in my campaign, there's a guard sergeant who will forever be known as Captain I Wrote It Down.
Yeah. We've all been there, right? I mean, there's the things that are like the great moments, or there's the things where maybe when you're a kid and you watched a movie that had a certain 3-bladed sword in it that could fire blades, that you're like, oh, that's really cool. Either as a DM, maybe you put it in a villain's hand, or as a player, you kind of, hey, maybe we could find this next time, Mr. DM, in our adventures. It's all those things. The game is funny, it's scary, it's tense. It's the thrill of victory and the agony of the natural one. And above all else, it's the sense of fellowship that you get from sitting around a table and sharing all that with other D&D players. So when you think about how does D&D Next fit into everything? And it's actually very simple. Everything I just talked about, that stuff doesn't have anything to do with the rules of the game. The rules are really just there to keep the game moving. They're a tool for the DM. They're kind of like an artist paints. Where the paint isn't what's important, it's the picture. We don't play D&D because we all just really like learning rules about armor class or figuring out attack bonuses or calculating saving throws. When you think back, to the first time you started playing D&D, and you think about those experiences and why are you still playing this game, if it's anything like my experiences, it's when you first figured out that you could do anything in this game. That most other games we probably had learned to that point have been all about the boundaries they create. They create a path that you can follow on a game board. Or they tell you, well, on your turn you can spend your resources to build a colony or improve your castle or anything like that. The rules are all about telling you what you could do, and that's all you could do. D&D taught us that we could do whatever we wanted in a game. There was no board, there were no boundaries. There was just freedom, to create, the freedom to choose what we wanted to do, the freedom to imagine our character, to imagine the world we were going to build and where our campaigns would take place. We could talk to the monster, not just fight it. We could form an alliance with the giants outside of town, with the NPCs. We could build a kingdom. We could even become gods. And the rules are all secondary to that stuff. But for too long, the rules have been at the forefront of the game. The rules, really, they put the designer at the forefront. They put the designer in charge of the game, and that misses the entire point of D&D. The point of D&D, the reason why we play, is the people at the table, the DM and the players, that those guys, us, as players and DMs, we're in charge. And that's why D&D, it's the one game that tells you, right there in the rule book, to break the rules, that these rules are guidelines. They're meant to be broken. They're meant to be bent. You can't get that like in poker, right? Unless you want to get arrested, right? Just decide I'm going to bring my own deck to the game, right? So really with D&D Next, it's all about putting the rules behind us. We want to create a simple set of core rules that are easy to learn, easy to modify, and we're going to let individual DMs build the campaigns that they want to run. And we'll let players decide what kind of characters they want to play. With that strong core of rules in place, we can go back to focusing on what makes D&D interesting, what got us all here in the first place, and what's kept us here. Things like new adventures, new settings, new stories, things that speak to what made us all fall in love with D&D in the first place.
Okay, I approve. But what is it about the current state of D&D that's made you embark on D&D Next?
So we launched the entire playtest process and the entire D&D Next process based on what we've seen going on in the community. We know that people are, not everyone, but there are a significant chunk of D&D fans who are unhappy with how the game has changed over the years. In some ways, R&D has chosen specific play styles and sort of said, this way of playing D&D is the right way, capital T, the right way to play. And it's really about bringing balance back to the situation, bringing balance back to the game, and giving a voice to the people who play D&D, to people who run D&D campaigns, to let them choose how do we want to play the game, because that's really the point of D&D. We want to bridge the gap between D&D fans, between fans and R&D, and we want to put the rules in the back seat and focus on actually playing the game and actually living those stories and living those campaigns. We want to focus, all that stuff I talked about before, like what made us all fall in love with D&D in the first place. We want to preserve that feeling, and we want to make sure that it never goes away. And the way we're doing that is by the open playtest. By giving all of you a chance to let us know what you like and what you don't like about D&D, and what you like and what you don't like about what we've done to the game, and what you want out of the game and what you need. And a lot of that comes out of looking at D&D's past and seeing how it's evolved over the years and seeing everyone's relationship with it, and it goes back to everything I said before, that D&D, it's yours. It's your campaign. You know, no one's, when people talk about their campaigns, their characters, there's a sense of, you know, you own it, it's yours. There's a possessiveness to it that you don't necessarily see in other games. You don't say, like, I'm playing my Settlers of Catan or my Monopoly. You just say, I'm playing Monopoly, but you'd say, I'm playing my D&D campaign tonight. And so that's what's really important, your campaigns, your stories, your house rules, your characters. And I think we've lost track of that as an R&D department. And as the guardians of the game, the overseers, the people who are keeping tabs of things. And today we're here to talk about how we're bringing it back and how we're getting back to what made us all fall in love with D&D in the first place.
So, okay, so if the idea of D&D Next is to create a version of the game that appeals to everybody, regardless of the edition they prefer, kind of you know, by the fans, for the fans sort of thing, how do you see your roles fitting into this process? I mean, everybody knows the axiom of too many cooks. So how are you and your team approaching the game's development?
So the way I think of it is that R&D's sort of proper role in things is that we serve as gatekeepers. We're responsible for tending to the game, but we're not really responsible for controlling it, for telling it where to go. You know, the game existed long before any of us came to work, well, except maybe Kim Moen, before we came to work on D&D, and it's going to be around after we leave. And you know, it's what you guys want to see in the game that's really important, not what we want to see in the game. You know, you tell us what you want, and then we're kind of as gatekeepers make sure that that stuff's going to be there, and it's going to be there in a way that speaks to why you want it and how you want to use it. And it's really giving players and fans the final say on what D&D is, not a group of game designers out in Seattle.
Okay. So I know the playtest isn't the only way which you guys have been getting feedback from the players. We've also seen a lot of conversations online about the artwork of the game, with John engaging fans to get their opinions, their thoughts about how the look of D&D Next is being shaped. John, tell us a little bit about that.
I'd love to, Kevin. So at the tail end of 2011, we started a discussion about the D&D world. You know, the discussion started off pretty simple. We chatted about where we were at, where we've been, where we wanted to go, what was going on, and we started diving down into all the discussions, having lots of exploration, diving into the legends and lore, and having a lot of big conversations, and decided that what we wanted to do is bring together a group of experts to really decide where we wanted to go with the direction of D&D. Fast forward, zoom, because lots of that was just a lot of talk in between all those times. But you fast forward until a couple of months ago, and that's when I started my Dragon Eye View articles. And that was just a place for me to kind of share with everybody out there who was interested to see what the creative side of D&D was, to have more discussions about what was going on. So I've been talking about everything from ampersands to owlbears. And one of the things, owlbears are a great point, by the way, because owlbears are a great place to sit here and have a discussion about what's a snapshot of what the process is that we're going through on this entire collection of D&D monsters. I'm not just talking about 1 or 2, 3. I'm talking about the entire breadth and width of all the D&D monsters that we've ever done.
Flumps?
Mike, are we doing flumps?
Of course we're doing the flumps.
Oh, right.
You can't be behind the worst monster.
Sorry I interrupted, go on.
No, that's what the whole point is. We're looking at everything right now. Nothing's off the table. But the first thing we always do is we huddle together as a group and we start talking about what's the legends and lore, looking at the creatures, look at our historical reference, you know, looking at the first edition to 4th edition and how it all fits, and then we have a conversation. Conversation might be a generous word. Some of the discussions some of the discussions are easy, some of them get pretty heated, some of them turn into yelling matches. Owlbears was a yelling match. I think I was yelling the loudest, but I'm not sure. But the thing about it is we all get together and we get at these tables, we have a big discussion, because here's the thing. Everybody at this table, sure, we all work for Wizards of the Coast, but everybody at the table, we're just huge fans. You know, I've been playing since 1975, and I'm the baby of the bunch, I think. And we love D&D. You know, and that's why we're so passionate about it. That's why we want to get into it, and that's why we're willing to sit here and throw down about the stuff we believe in. So each and every one of us wants to create the best expression of D&D. This isn't about egos. This is about creating something that's bigger than ourselves, and that's what we want to do. So anyway, so what we do is we decide, we look at the creature and say, is it broken? Or does it work? Or does it just need to be tweaked? Is it working okay? Sometimes we tweak the lore, sometimes we tweak the art, but the first thing we try and do every time is we look at principle number 1. And principle number 1 is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So whether it's a goblin, or an owlbear, or a knoll, all the 3 things I've been showing recently on the Dragon's Eye View articles, what I want to do is I want to just talk about linking together that lore and the art and making sure they mesh. Because there's nothing worse than reading a piece of lore that says, hi, this guy acts this way or lives this way, and it doesn't match up. That's a horrible experience, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to live that way. So what we're doing is we're dipping our fingers into this stuff. We're dipping our toes into it, really. It's that deep. But what we're trying to do is build a really cohesive and vibrant world. We want to build the immense encyclopedia, the biggest world Bible that you can think of. And we just want to enjoy it and have a lot of fun. So this is going to be the definitive guide for the world of D&D when we're finished. And we're working for a lot of this stuff. And you know, we've just been talking about the monsters here. We haven't even started talking about the races, the classes, the cultures, and all the little nitbits about this stuff. We've got a lot yet to do.
Fantastic. So one of the things that I find really interesting is that this sort of artistic collaboration is stretching into other portions of D&D as well. And right now I'm thinking about the novels. And Ed, that's your department.
That's right. Over on the storytelling side of things, there's been a lot of the same sort of back and forth with John and his team. And it's really unprecedented and exciting. I have to say, from what I've seen, John and his team are doing an excellent job of capturing the right look and feel of the characters and the monsters from the stories we're telling in the realms.
So you brought up the Forgotten Realms, and actually let's talk about that for a minute. So Mike, how do the Forgotten Realms fit into D&D next, right? Is this the default setting? What are we doing with Greyhawk and Eberron and Dark Sun and Dragonlance and all the other settings?
So to start with, in the past, we've seen that trying to do a lot of in-depth support for multiple settings backfires. There's like business reasons and all that, but that's not really important to you guys. I mean, you guys are here to play D&D. You aren't here to run the business of D&D. So that's not what's important. The key for us, though, comes down to focus. If we focus on one world at a time, that means we can bring it to life in a way that has never been done before. The Forgotten Realms is a focus on new material, but that doesn't mean we're ignoring our other settings. Make that very clear. We're focusing on the realms to begin with, but it doesn't mean that that's the only setting we are ever going to do. We definitely have things in mind for what we want to do with our other settings. We just want to make sure that if we put all of our energy and focus and really focus on making one great setting for now, to avoid splinting our attention and giving you 6 mediocre ones. Because I think really the exciting thing with the realms is the sheer depth of untapped material that's waiting to see the light of day. You know, a lot of it's just going back and looking at 25 years of published Forgotten Realms material and looking at what's already been said. You know, when you think about it, I mean, it's an immense world. It's a world with a stunning variety of cultures, locations, and people. It's a grand tapestry that in a lot of ways has been kept hidden behind closed doors. You had to be a real realm scholar to delve into the specifics of each region and to really learn about the world. So I want to change that. We're going to change that. We're going to dust off that grand tapestry, bring out the colors, make it a little bit more vivid. A lot of that's going to be the work John's doing and the work Ed's doing, the work we're doing all together, and bring that to life and share that with you. Because at the end of the day, when you actually really delve into the realms and you really look at what's there, it's far more than the typical fantasy world based on medieval Europe. It's a bustling, diverse, vibrant world that we just can't wait to unleash it. You know, to look at the art we've been working on and the stories we have to tell, it's very exciting because it's the largest, most detailed fantasy setting that's ever been created. And so we're going to bring the realms to life by coordinating our efforts in terms of the visual elements, the writing, bringing everything together in a way that's never been attempted in the history of D&D. And, you know, the realms are going to be great, but we do have other great settings that TSR and Wizards have produced over the years. Myself, I started with Greyhawk with the original 1983 box set. Yeah, Greyhawk fans represent, right? And I still love Greyhawk. You know, it's still probably my favorite fantasy setting. So with that in mind, I am enormously proud to announce that in early 2013, we'll release the first wave of D&D backlist products in electronic format once again. We've gone back into the catalog. And we're serious about this. We're going back in the catalog. We're going all the way back to the depths of TSR's history. And it's going to take some time to bring everything out. We have a plan. But we're going to make products from all editions available, all settings available, and so we have a schedule. It's not just be all at once. You know, that'd be a bit daunting for us to manage. But regardless of what edition you love, regardless of what setting you love, no matter what you love about D&D, we want to bring it back to you, and we want to have it for you.
I was telling Greg Leeds earlier that nowadays pretty much all of my role-playing game rule books are on my iPad with the exception of one particular favorite game. So I'm really pleased about that. Ed, the Forgotten Realms have been your stomping ground for quite some time. You were saying earlier that you've been creating stories in the Realms for something like 45 years. Okay, how is that possible? That's longer than D&D. What's the background on that?
Well, I'm a storyteller. I've always been a storyteller. When I was about 6 years old, I needed a place where my imagination could spin stories of swords and sorcery, and that place became the Forgotten Realms. Years later, in 1975, I discovered this great game that Gary Gygax had come up with, Dungeons and Dragons, and I read it, and I started writing not just stories, but adventures set in the realms. And the rest is gaming history. So, over the years, because there's been that many years, there have been countless stories told in the realms. And some are mine, some are by all sorts of other authors and game designers. But most of them, when you think about it, have been told by all of you. And those are the most important stories of all, the ones you create around your gaming table. After all, that's a lot of what Dungeons and Dragons is. You gather together and you tell the story. And what better way to help players tell stories than to provide a rich, colorful, detailed world setting that can be used as is or modified to your heart's content. So, we have been fixing up the realms to get it ready for everyone, to get it ready for you to tell more stories.
I mean, telling stories in the realms has always been fun. I haven't actually ever set a campaign in the realms, but I've been pretty much blatantly stealing your ideas for about 30 years or so. And it's helped tremendously, and I appreciate that. So actually, while we're up here, let me just thank you for coming up with the realms. You've made my game tremendously better. This makes me pleased. Yeah. But that said, right, for myself, and probably for a lot of people in the audience, I've seen a lot of things done with or done to the Forgotten Realms that I haven't necessarily been thrilled with. You know, I think it's great that you're working hard to fix up the realms, but I'm a little leery of what that means. I still remember how Baal's death back at the end of first edition to pave the way for second edition killed off every single assassin. I have a character who would still like to have words with you. So are we looking at another transitional world-shaking event, another Time of Troubles, another Spell Plague?
There is something big happening, but it's not a Time of Troubles, and it's definitely not another Spell Plague. Now, one of the things that I like about D&D campaigns, and about the realms in particular, is that the story, the many stories, they never end. So tonight, I am honored to announce and introduce to all of you the 6 authors of a new series of novels that make up an exciting story filled with dramatic changes to the world. It's something Realms fans dare not miss. something that will right the realms. And we call it the Sundering. I feel like I should be drawing a sword at this point. Now, okay, the first book in the series, The Companions, will be written by a man who needs no introduction to Realms fans, Bob Salvatore. I'm sorry he couldn't be with us here this weekend, but I can promise that longtime fans of Bob's Realms novels are going to be delighted with what they read. The author of the next Sundering novel, The Godborn, is Paul Kemp. And readers familiar with his previous Realms books are going to see some old friends and evils in the cast of Paul's book. Then, the Reigns of the Sundering sequence pass to Aaron Evans in The Adversary. And characters from her earlier Realms novels will appear in her Sundering book too, not to mention A Familiar Place and power groups we've seen before. Veteran writer Richard Lee Byers then takes us to a different story focus in The Reaver. Things get wetter, and we see new heroes and non-heroes. Followed by another veteran of the Realms, Troy Denning. And yes, Realms fans will see some old favorites in the cast of The Sentinel, not to mention new threats in A Familiar Place. And that leaves me to bat cleanup. And it should by now come as no particular surprise to learn that certain recognizable characters I've featured before will smile at you from the pages of my Sundering novel, The Herald.
So, Ed, I know you don't want to give us spoilers for the novels.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Okay, so I know you can't give us spoilers from the novels, but what can you tell us about the Sundering? Can you give us an idea of how you and the other authors got together and worked through the great big story that's going to set the realms right?
Sure. We all met at Wizards back in November for a few intense, fun days of creating and discussing and deciding what would happen to the realms when the Sundering occurred, what it would be like to live through all that chaos, and you'll experience that when you read our Sundering novels, and what the realms would be like afterwards. So we're still at it, of course, and for me, being at that table and participating in the blizzard of emails that have followed it has been both exciting and an honor. It's been really cool to envisage characters, and then John and his team whip up an illustration, and you're looking at those characters, and they really feel like they fit the realms. I shouldn't give away too much about the Sundering, but let me just say there will be war. I know, there's always war. But although there are going to be gods and their chosen taking some sort of part in this story, there are also just plain folks struggling to stay alive and defend what they hold dear. And you'll see that in the Sundering books, and your characters will be a part of that defending afterwards.
We're trying to get at the heart of what the Forgotten Realms is all about. It has grown and changed a lot over the 30 years or so that it's been around, and we're trying to get it back to its roots.
We want to get back to the basics of what Dungeons & Dragons is and what the Forgotten Realms were. And I firmly believe that it is that original vision of the Forgotten Realms that Ed brought in. The freshness, the clarity, that made it so special.
Sembia, in my original conception, is the land of fat, rich merchants. What do we love the most about the realms? What is most fun about the realms? What haven't we brought out?
The fundamental reality of the realms is this wonderful dream that Ed Greenwood created and let the rest of us participate in. It's this vision of this wonderful fantasy world.
Yeah, if you want to get rid of the atmosphere during the Sun Ring, there's always other wars.
When you get a chance to collaborate, the chance to brainstorm and trade ideas with people who are as enthusiastic about a project as you are, you jump at them.
It lifts the energy level, and people can cap each other's ideas or string them out or say, wait a minute, you haven't thought about this. It lifts you all above what you could achieve on your own by constantly challenging and reshaping all the ideas firing around the table. It begins to take you further, faster than you could go by yourself. A pirate captain who's been drowned, putrefied, and seawater dripping from him. Yeah, I'm back.
It all came clear to me as I'm listening to Troy and Ed talk about the gods of the realms. I'm listening to Richard Lee Byers talking about what he might want to do with the Sea of Fallen Stars. I outlined 2 books, my next 2 books, in that session today.
You're talking about human drama or elven drama on a massive scale. And if you just tell it from one point of view, I think something like that could make for just a great book.
When I get to sit down in a room with Rich Baker and Ed Greenwood and Bob Salvatore and bounce ideas back and forth and talk about this big new project that we're all going to be part of, you know, I'll do this thing and it'll make your thing even cooler, you know, and it's just, it gets you really psyched to go home and write something.
Everybody has worked in the realms before and has a particular interest in the corners of the world that they have staked out in the stories they've told before. It's the classic D&D trope, right? You need a fighter, a wizard, a rogue, and a cleric to go into the dungeon together to overcome the obstacles. And everybody brings their unique perspectives, their capabilities to make something bigger than any one person's vision.
When you have a world like this, you can look at it, you can pick up on story streams that other people have done, you can look at the map, and you can just see that there's this wealth of possibility out there.
The Realms has always been an ongoing tapestry of interwoven stories, and we're just looking at making sure that the tapestry is unfolding in the direction we want.
Hopefully the novels are going to tell wonderful personal stories that make this change in the world make sense.
It's going to evoke very powerfully the things that people love most about the realms, but at the same time it's going to be suspenseful and surprising. It's going to be everything you could possibly want in like a classic realm story.
I think that we're going to tell the best stories we can, tell the stories we love, and hope by going back to what I consider to be the heart of the realms, the high fantasy, that will draw the fans back to what they love.
I would love to see these 6 books that we're planning for 2013 and 2014 to go out there and just take everybody by surprise. I think we're going to do that by working with the authors to get just fantastic stories, compelling characters, and classic fantasy.
I need a haircut.
And you've introduced the authors and their upcoming novels, but if you would, take a minute to walk through the book covers and introduce the main characters of the Sundering to everyone who's watching.
Okay, starting with Drizzt in The Companions. Drizzt Do'Urden is a rare specimen, a drow with a conscience. But lately, his lofty ideals have been called into question by the allies he's chosen to fight by his side. Then, of course, Elminster in The Herald, chosen and beloved by the goddess of magic. Elminster is a wise old sage, mischievous meddler, and a world-weary archmage struggling to keep up with the changing realms. In The Adversary by Aaron M. Evans, Farida is a young tiefling warlock who struggles to reconcile the secrets of her past with the powers that beckon from deep within the hells. Oh, this is fun. In Paul Kemp's The Godborn, Vazen Kale is half shade, half man, heir to Ereviscale's legacy of violence, but his heart burns bright with the light of a monitor. In The Sentinel by Troy Denning, Sergeant Cleve Kenrick is an embittered paladin who stubbornly clings to his family's worship of the dead god Helm. In The Reaver by Richard Lee Byers, Anton Merivaldi is a Termishan pirate, sardonic and deadly with a blade, whose boldness and ruthlessness have made him the terror of the Sea of Fallen Stars. And in this pantheon of main characters from the Sundering novels, you may recognize some old favorites. But of course, there are some new characters here too, not to mention some classic characters we aren't going to name here today.
Okay, so Mike, this brings up something that has bothered me a bit in the past. It's a little odd that we're following up one big realm-shaking event with another. I mean, the Realms has a lot going for it, but I think that a lot of players over the years have felt like their characters are playing sort of second fiddle to the big iconic names who are in the Realms. I know that was one of the reasons that Eberron tends to have low-level NPCs. And characters from the novels, right, like Elminster and Drizzt, Finder Wyvernspurn, and Mask and the others, Kelemvor. They're usually the center of attention. So don't those big events kind of take up the space that players would normally use for their own home campaign? Doesn't that sort of run against what you've been saying about players owning the Realms?
Yeah, so it does. And because of that, there are two changes we're going to make. First, within our novels and the stories that Wizards of the Coast tells, we're going to really focus on the personal challenges that those characters face. There are untold stories waiting to be unfurled in the Realms, and those stories are going to focus on single characters as individuals, the threats that they face in their lives, their rivals, their friends, all the obstacles that they face on a very personal level, as within their lives. When the effects of the Sundering have settled, when the world has entered into its new era, that era of massive change, of the realm-shaking event of the year, and the iconic characters driving that action, that's going to come to an end. We're going to enter a new era. For way too long, we've left the big stories of the Forgotten Realms up to our characters rather than your characters. That's something that doesn't make much sense in a D&D setting where the DM and the characters in the adventuring group, the players, have the potential to become the center of the action in the world. Characters like Elminster, Drizzt, the other iconic characters of the Realms, they're going to continue to have their adventures, but their exploits are going to be exactly that. They're going to be their adventures. In the new era of the Realms, it's up to the heroes that you play to make an impact in the world. Your characters will determine the unfolding tapestry of the Forgotten Realms. Shaping the Realms is your job now. The Realms is truly going to become your setting.
So it's clear that you, Mike, and John, and Ed, and all the authors and the designers have been working together to make big changes to the Realms. John, I don't want to spoil the story, but can you show us some of the visuals that you're using to help represent the Realms going forward?
Sure. So we got a smattering of imagery. It's all just different stages. It's concepts and pencils and finals, and actually nothing's really final because we're all just learning what we're doing as we're going along and getting your feedback. But you probably noticed a few pieces of art around the room. There's just a lot of stuff that we're doing, a lot of things we're playing with. We're working on everything from races and classes to artifacts and architecture, even down to what a random villager would look like. And so we're really trying to build up that word Bible. It's not just about monsters and famous characters.
Okay, well, so with any D&D game, like in my home campaign, my characters change the world. They take actions, those actions ripple outwards, and the world changes because of what they did. How does that work with something like the Forgotten Realms, right? You said a couple times that it's going to be sort of owned by the players and that the changes that they make actually make a difference. Is it going to actually have an effect on the official campaign setting? And if so, how does that work?
So next year, we are going to publish 2 adventures set in the Forgotten Realms. And the R&D team at Wizards has turned to Ed Greenwood and Bob Salvatore to help us create those adventures. When you play through those adventures, as a player, as a DM, you are going to have the ability to make a direct impact on the Forgotten Realms. We're going to collect results of those adventures, assuming you take the time to let us know what happened in your campaign. And the aggregate results of those adventures are going to shape the future of the Forgotten Realms. If you guys topple the kingdom, if you unleash a horde of demons, or maybe burn Zental Keep to the ground again, that is what is going to happen in the canonical history of the Forgotten Realms.
We're going back to what we all loved about the realms. And one of those things is that you could do anything with it.
So let's shift gears and talk about what's going on right now with the public playtest. But before we dive into that, we thought it would be fun to show you one other piece of fan involvement. Wizards recently has been running a fan video contest on their Facebook page. And I'd like to show you one of the videos of fans participating in a slightly unusual way.
Son of a...
Yeah, I so relate to that. My favorite character once failed a 2-foot jump check over a pit. So, Mike, how are you avoiding rolling a critical failure on the D&D playtest?
Well, really, it's by having a lot of aid and other actions. As last time we checked, about 75,000 of them. That's how many fans have. I think the last time we updated was about a week ago. It's been going up. Obviously, it goes up every day. But since we launched our first public playtest in May, a lot of people have taken part. And we've done some surveys. Thank you very much to everyone who filled out those surveys in response when we asked. We send you the email saying, hey, the next survey's up. It's been a huge help. We go through forums, blog posts, Reddit, everywhere we can get feedback, we're looking for it. And there's been a lot of stuff that's been great. It's been very well thought out. It's really helped us a lot. It's really your ideas, your thoughts, your opinions. All of that has been an enormous help for us as we keep on working on D&D Next.
And a new playtest packet went out like 2 days ago, right?
That's right.
2 or 3 days ago? Right, okay. So you've got a lot of people participating in the playtest, and you want more players to sign up. How much, so this is one of the questions actually we got asked a lot on EN World with people not really feeling like they were going to have, like their opinion was going to have an impact. How much impact are players actually having on the game? How much have they already? And can you give us some examples of this?
Sure, so probably the best thing to start with is to look at the 4 core character classes. If you've looked at the latest packet that we posted on, I think it was Monday, it went live, you've seen a lot of these changes. So with the cleric, starting with this character class, it's traditionally been a healer. We got a lot of feedback from the first packet that said, look, people like being able to heal and also attack or do something else. They didn't necessarily like just spending their entire action in every round of combat, just letting the rest of the party have fun. So what we've done is we've now given clerics the option to heal and attack through the spell, through your ability to channel divine power, and made that a core feature of the character class. So that's something we want to make sure is there, and cleric players have spoken loud and clear. A lot of players like having that option. For the fighter, a lot of people, like maybe more than 70% of you, based on our surveys, have said they kind of felt the fighter from the first playtest packet was a little boring. Just doing the same thing round after round, attacking and then attacking again was kind of feeling a little old. So we've introduced a new concept to the game, this idea of expertise dice. And the way they're meant to work, the idea behind them is it's kind of like you could think almost like a boxer or martial artist. You're sizing up your opponent And your expertise dice represent your ability to take advantage of those sudden openings or those opportunities that a lesser warrior might overlook, but that your fighter can jump upon and seize to his or her advantage. Now with rogues, we had something kind of funny happen with our first pre-gen playtest rogue. It's the kind of thing that makes you guys probably hate the fact that we give you pre-gens, at least to start with. We created a rogue with innate wisdom. And yeah, someone's laughing. As you might know if you play D&D, I'm sure some people in this room have done, wisdom is sort of important to spotting hidden things like traps, which rogues are kind of, in theory, supposed to be good at, and our playtest rogue was kind of aggressively not good at, especially compared to the cleric.
One in our group exploded magnificently.
See, yeah, there you go, right? I mean, sometimes triggering the trap is half the fun, at least for the rest of the group who are hopefully safely far away from the rogue. So I guess we could have given the rogue like D20 hit dice, or we could have given the rogue a mechanic that lets him or her excel at a skill regardless of the underlying ability score that would tie to it. So that's one of the new features of the rogue. If as a rogue you say, hey, I'm going to be good at this skill, even if you have a 6 charisma, you still manage to be like, a pretty smooth talker just because you picked up a few tricks. You can kind of overcome your natural drawbacks, if you will. Now with the wizard, we've got a lot of interesting feedback about the wizard, about the magic system, which I'll get to in a little bit. But what I want to talk about the wizard is you didn't see too many changes in this last playtest packet, but we are going to be introducing the concept of arcane sort of like methods of using magic, the traditions of magic, if you will. So that's something we're going to be unveiling. It's not in the latest playtest packet, but you can look forward to it in the future. That'll cover things like wild magic, or like a war mage type spellcaster who really just studied arcane magic for use in battle. It basically represents your wizard's approach to magic and how you learned and what you do with your magic and how you use it.
Okay. So playtesting is continuing. How long is the playtest going to go before its pencil is down? And is there anything in particular that your team is asking people to take a look at as they playtest?
So the thing is with the playtesting is we still have a long way to go. We've only done the 4 core classes from levels 1 to 5. And we anticipate that it's going to be about a 2-year process at our current rate. We've always said that we were going to do it right. We're not going to try to do it fast. We're not going to try to speed to the end. We're going to take the time as needed to make sure that we can continue to take in fan feedback, that we can continue to make sure we're on course, and that the game is right out of the gate. I can't emphasize that enough. We're very serious about taking the time we need to get this right. So, speaking of something which we specifically might need some help with, I mentioned under the wizard that we got some feedback on the wizard specifically, but then we got a lot of feedback about magic. So some people really like D&D's classic magic system, the Vancian method of spell casting, right? You prepare a spell, when you cast it, it's gone. Other people really liked in 4E, we had the power system where you could have at-will magic, you could have encounter spells, or once you cast them, if you rest for 5 minutes, you regain the magic, and then you have your daily spells, which are essentially this Vancian casting. And there's another kind of funny thing in the history of role-playing games. There's been entire games that have been written in response to D&D's magic system, where people look at it and go, that's not how magic works, right? Clearly, magic should work this way, and usually it's a spell point system in a lot of cases. And, when we think about it, there's all these different ways you can represent magic, and we've talked a lot about modularity, and we want players to have the freedom to make the characters that they've always wanted to play and play them in the way they want to play them. And so we thought long and hard about the issue, and in the end, we realized that we should probably just put all 3 of those in the game. Why just settle for 1 when you can have 3 different types of magic? So it really wasn't that hard, get into about that modularity, and that it is like allowing you guys, you guys as DMs and players, to make the game yours, either as a DM or as a player. And that modularity is a really big feature of the game in D&D Next. So, starting tomorrow, we are releasing levels 1 to 5 of the Warlock character class and the Sorcerer character class. So, if you're familiar with Warlocks, this really shouldn't be too surprising to you. Warlocks forge pacts with otherworldly entities, and they are able to channel magic from those entities to fuel their invocations that they've learned. And those entities could be a Fey Lord, an Elemental Prince, or even stranger beings that inhabit the Outer Planes. In a way, we've done a little reconcepting with Warlocks kind of picture them almost as like reality hackers. Like, they've unearthed forbidden lore and ancient secrets, almost like in a pulp sorcery kind of way, that it's just like the hidden secrets that man was not meant to know, and using those to decode the fabric of reality and rebuild it, using those invocations and taking power by striking bargains with these strange creatures from beyond the planes or from the planes themselves. So that's our first new character class. And then with the sorcerer, if you're familiar with the sorcerer's lore, the sorcerers tap into this idea of a wellspring of magical power that exists within them. But we've kind of put a little bit of a twist on that, and allowing for the fact that that source could come from any number of ways. That really it's just a magic that infuses the sorcerer's soul, whether that magic is from a draconic bloodline, maybe it's from a curse that was levied on the sorcerer's family, maybe it's from some strange ritual when the sorcerer is first born, like the first child born under the new moon at just the right time when the stars line up, that this child will be granted these powers. And the idea is that sorcerers expend their willpower, their focus, by expending that and burning off those internal reservoirs of mental energy. They can take that innate power and focus it into magical spells and unleash it on the world. So both those character classes are going to be available here at the show. We have our D&D Next playtest area. We're allowing people to make up characters, then go on about an hour-long adventure. And then also, starting tomorrow, that is our next playtest packet. If you go to dndnext.com, you can download the packet, and it'll include both those character classes from levels 1 to 5.
Fantastic. So that's great news to end up day one of Gen Con. And as your team continues to incubate more ideas and get them out to the place testing group, I am really looking forward to being able to spring them on my group. I mean, let my group use them. Yeah, exactly. We're getting monsters.
So there's a lot I could say about monsters. Actually, well, we have panels. We're going to show you a schedule, but we got some interesting stuff going on with monsters.
Okay. So in fact, for folks in the audience, here are the events and seminars related to the future of D&D that you can check out during the show. We've got them up there, and of course, they're also in the main book. In addition, we've got a great poster of the characters from the Sundering for each of you to pick up on your way out. There's plenty of space on that for you to have the authors sign it at the authors' Sundering panels as well. And as we finish up, this is kind of interesting for me because I'm not a WotC employee. I've been lucky enough to be involved with D&D through EN World for a decade or so now. And it is, I'm very appreciative of getting a chance to ask you questions and sort of represent the fan base while we're up here. If I do a bad job, everyone's going to yell at me back on the boards when we get back, but it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And from my perspective, I'm really liking how D&D Next is looking right now. I ran my group through, the first thing I did was run them through B1, In Search of Adventure, which turned out to be the very first module way back in the late 1970s that a friend showed me when he said, "You've got to play this." And I looked at it and I didn't understand it at all. And now finally, after all these years, I've gotten to actually run it as a game, and it's fantastic. People who are interested in my ideas or my thoughts can follow the commentary on EN World's D&D Next forum. We will certainly keep up with D&D Next news as it becomes available. And most importantly, thank you all so very much. You are here in this auditorium, you're watching online, you're watching the recording because you give a damn about Dungeons & Dragons. And that is freaking awesome. So thank you. Thanks very much.